So, hello there, and welcome back to another Nights of the Movies podcast. I'm Spy Knight, and in these podcasts, I love talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I am continuing on with my Shrek film reviews, as I review the final film in the Shrek franchise so far, which is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. So, let's get into it, shall we? Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was and is the sixth film in the Shrek franchise, and it is of course a follow-on, it is of course a sequel to the first Puss in Boots, which came out in 2011. And this film in America came out in 2021, and in the UK, where I live, this film came out in 2022. That's right, in the UK, this film came out 11 years after its predecessor. It came out 11 years too late. That's what it felt like when it was coming out. I was very surprised that they actually made a Puss in Boots sequel, let alone how long it took them to make it. And when this was coming out, I had hope for it, I did, but I didn't think it was going to be any good. But I remember going to watch this at the cinema, and I'd heard a couple of things about the film before I saw it at the cinema. I'd heard that it sets up Shrek 5 in a way. I'd actually heard that Shrek makes a cameo in the film. I hadn't seen the cameo, I hadn't seen any footage from the film online, but I'd heard that from a couple of film pundits and reviewers that I follow online. So I went into the film, I think, waiting for that setup for Shrek 5, because Shrek was such a huge part of my childhood, and when I heard that a Shrek 5 is in production, I think it's been in production since like 2015, I want to say 2017 maybe. It's been in production for quite a long while, that's the point I'm making. I have been looking forward to it. I wanted to see the Shrek franchise continue, particularly after the disappointment for me that was the fourth Shrek film, Shrek Forever After. So when I heard this film set up Shrek 5, that's what I was waiting to see when I went to go and watch it in the cinema. So my mind was kind of on that when I was watching the film. I was waiting for that setup to happen. Plus, I saw somebody in the cinema, the first time I saw this movie, I saw somebody in the cinema that I thought I knew, and it did turn out to be somebody that I knew. But I didn't know that until I finished the film, and I was walking out the cinema, and this person came up behind me and said, "Oh, how are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I didn't know if that was you on." So throughout my first viewing of this film, I was looking over this person that I wasn't sure if I knew or not, and I was waiting for this setup for Shrek 5. That was what my film viewing experience was like the first time I saw this movie. But even with that, not great viewing experience, I still ended up enjoying this film a lot more than I expected to the first time I saw it. But when I watched the film the other day, I sat down to watch it and I realised, you know what? I haven't seen this film since I first watched it in the cinema, all the way back in February of 2022. I haven't seen this film since then. So I sat down to watch it, hoping that I would still enjoy it, but prepared not to. I don't know why, but I thought it wasn't going to work for me. I thought, yeah, you know what, maybe the charm of this film is just going to wear off me this time, because I wasn't in a good mood. Yeah, I think it's because I wasn't in a good mood. I wasn't expecting much from this film, and when I sat down to watch it the other day, I was like, is there going to be a reason that I hadn't watched this since seeing it in the cinema? And am I going to suddenly realise that reason when I'm rewatching this film now? But after watching the film the other day, I am happy to say that I think this film is absolutely brilliant. This is a family film all about death that manages to be wildly entertaining and glorious to look at. This is a brilliant film for so many reasons, because it's a film about death, and on paper, making a family film or a children's film, if you want to call it that. I hate the phrase children's film or kids film, but making a quote-unquote kids film about death sounds like a terrible idea. It sounds like you'd be laughed at the offices of a film production studio if you pitch that idea. But actually, it turns out to be great. And the way it explores themes surrounding death, the way it has a character who is literally death in the big bad wolf in the film, works perfectly. And yes, it's a film about death, and that is one of the main themes, if not the main theme of the film, but it still managed to be a Puss in Boots adventure. It still managed to be so enormously entertaining and engaging that you're watching the film and you don't want to look away from it. When I sat down to watch the film, I was going to build some Lego whilst it was on because I didn't think the film was going to work for me that much, and that's how I often feel when I want to watch a film, I want to rewatch a film for the channel, but I just don't think I'm going to enjoy it. So I sat down and I started to build some Lego, but then I put the Lego aside and I just sat and watched the film because I was so engaged by the animation style. I love the animation style that this film has. You know, it's got this sort of hand-drawn, kinetic comic book style animation that is coming off, you know, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and the animation from that film, which is also visually gorgeous. But I also like how this film didn't just directly copy the animation from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's got its own unique style, and it updates the animation of DreamWorks animated films, which I do think was needed. Although I didn't mind the animation in the first Puss in Boots film, I was watching that film, having watched Puss in Boots The Last Wish a good couple of years ago now, thinking, I am so glad that they updated the animation when it comes to the sequel, because it looks so much better and it manages to breathe new life into this film, which was needed. If they just use the same animation that the first Puss in Boots used, I can tell you now, it would not have worked as well. The story still would have been there, the themes and ideas explored in the film, which I'll talk about very briefly which I'll talk about very shortly in this review, you know, they still would have been there as well. It still would have been a good film, but I don't think it would have been a great film that it did end up being, and I think it's a great film because of the style of animation, which, and I don't know if lots of time and energy was spent into the animation, but it looks like a lot of time and energy was put into the animation of the film, and you can tell when you watch it. It feels like, honestly, it feels like every frame of this film is being hand-drawn, and I don't know if that was the case, but it feels like every frame of this film has been carefully animated to look the way it does. You know, I love the style of animation when it comes to this film, and I think that also influenced the style of animation with The Wild Robot, which came out last year and was one of my favourite films of last year. I think it was my third favourite film of last year, and I loved the animation in that film in particular, and I think the animation of The Wild Robot wouldn't have been the way it was without this film. So I think it's a good thing that DreamWorks animated movies are using this style of animation now, and I'm hoping they use this style of animation when it comes to Shrek 5, which is coming out next year. And I'll talk about my thoughts regarding this film and Shrek 5 and how they're going to connect a bit later in this review. But going on to the themes and ideas explored in the film, already mentioned this film is about death, and that's a dark theme. That's a heavy theme, especially for a family film which is primarily targeting its audience at kids. But it doesn't explore death in a particularly dark way. I mean, the film is dark in parts, for sure. Whenever the big bad wolf shows up, there's a presence and there's a dominance with that character that you feel, and the big bad wolf is an excellent villain and a brilliant personification of death. I love whenever that character shows up. But the film isn't too dark, and what it actually does, yes, it's a film about death, what it actually says about death is kind of heartwarming. It's like, don't wish your life away. Value the life you have. You only have one life. Make it count. Because the whole thing in this film is, you know, Puss in Boots' 8 lives are over, and now he's only got one life left, and he wants to get to the wishing star so that he can wish more lives back, and that so he can, you know, be the Puss in Boots with 8 lives all over again. But then he realises by the end of the film that he just needs to make this life count, and he needs to make this life valuable. He needs to just take each day as it is and stop wishing his life away. And I love that when it comes to this film, because everybody needs a message like that. I can't tell you how many times I've sat there wanting for a day to come in the near distant future because I've been wishing my life away. I've been wanting that to come, and I've sat there thinking, you know what, my life isn't that worthwhile. But then you watch this film and you realise, you know what, I should value my life more. And I think that's a great message for all families out there, and I think that's one of the reasons this film managed to be a great family film, because there's stuff in this film for kids, for people of an adolescent age, and then for people of an older age, parents, grandparents even. There's messages for all people of different ages and whatnot in a family. And also, I love the things that everybody needs family. Everybody needs someone to rely on. Even if you don't think you do. You do. You need someone to rely on. You need family. And they are important to you. Everybody deserves family. And that theme keeps coming back throughout the film in all these different characters. Even the side characters like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, which are great characters in the film. You know, Goldilocks and the Three Bears could have just been some side antagonists, which were pretty forgettable. But instead, you get fleshed out characters when it comes to Goldilocks and the Three Bears, which is the sort of stuff you got in the first two Shrek movies. And you didn't really get in the third and fourth Shrek movies, even though I quite enjoy the third Shrek film. But you haven't really got since then. And it starts to remind you of the sort of writing, the sort of character writing at that you got in the first two Shrek movies. And it starts to remind you as well why you fell in love with the Shrek franchise in the first place. Because they managed to write these side characters so perfectly. And Goldilocks and the Three Bears could have been some throwaway characters. In fact, they should have been some throwaway characters. If I was making this film, they probably would have been. But instead, the writers thought, you know what? We're going to flesh out these characters. We're going to show that there's actually more to Goldilocks than we think. There's more to her than just being this gangster. We're going to show there's more to these three bears than just being her, you know, her supporters, for lack of a better phrase. And I love how they flesh out those characters. I love how they flesh out the themes in the film. I love how they explore the themes in the film, because they don't feel spoon-fed to you like they did in the fourth Shrek film. Like the themes in the fourth Shrek film felt spoon-fed to you. At times, the themes in the first Puss in Boots movie felt spoon-fed to you. But in this film, the themes about family and the themes about death and all these other themes I explored in the movie, which I haven't even mentioned, but all the themes and all the ideas explored in this film aren't spoon-fed to you and are just beautifully woven into the plot and woven into the story and woven into the narrative and all that jazz in a way that just works to great effect. And I love the character development in this film. I love how Puss in Boots starts to question his quote-unquote legendary status. He starts to question, what is it to be a legend? Do I need to be the legend that is Puss in Boots anymore? Or do I just need to be the person I want to be? And Kitty Softpaws, who is the best character, who was, probably the best new character from the first Puss in Boots movie, and I'm so glad to see her back in this film. I love how she starts to question that sort of stuff as well, and I love seeing that dynamic back, because I spoke about this in my review of the first Puss in Boots movie. The best part of that first Puss in Boots film is the dynamic between Puss in Boots and Kitty Softpaws. And when you see that back in this film, it's just an absolute delight. The character development with those two characters, realising that they need one another, it's just wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And as I've already said, the villain in The Big Bad Wolf is excellent. I'm hoping that villain comes back in the fifth Shrek film, because when you see him at the end of the film, he just says, you know, I will see you again. He says something like that, something on those lines. And Puss in Boots says, I know we will see each other again. It's a conversation like that. I got it badly wrong there. But get the point I'm making. They hint that the Big Bad Wolf is going to come back. And I'm hoping he does. I'm hoping he's the villain in the next Shrek film, because that could make for a very interesting story. You know, Shrek sort of questioning his mortality the way Puss in Boots does in this film, and making the whole Shrek world question its mortality. I don't know. I'm just theorizing with what they could with this what the story of the next Shrek film could be. But I think if the big bad wolf is in the next Shrek film, then that's a good sign, because he's an excellent villain. Every time he's on screen, you got the whistle, you know. I can't remember what the whistle tune is now, but he whistles something, and every time he's on screen, you feel threatened by that villain. He's only an animated villain, but he is quite simply one of the best animated villains I've seen in any animated movie, period. He is an excellent addition to this film. Plus, I love the music in this movie. I love how the film, kind of opens with this big musical number, who is your favourite fearless hero? Which I've been humming to myself ever since I rewatched the film the other day. I love the opening musical number. I love the score to the film. I love the way it's so energetic and it's constantly moving. This film flew by. I was watching the film and I just couldn't believe how much fun I was having with it. And what the funny thing is? On top of everything, I said this about 5 times in this review, and I'm going to say it again here. It's a film about death. But you know what? It managed to breathe new life into the Shrek franchise. I know this isn't a Shrek film, but it's a spin-off to the Shrek franchise. And this film had no right to be as good as it is. It's a belated 10, 11 years sequel that came out way too late and did not deserve to be as good as it was. But it managed to breathe new life into the Shrek franchise, because when people were talking about Shrek 5 before this film came out, they kind of talked about it in a jokey way. They're kind of ridiculing it. Whenever I hear film pundits talk about a potential 5th Shrek film before this film came out, they were like, no, that's a terrible idea. Everyone thought it was a joke. Now, after seeing Puss in Boots The Last Wish, aka Puss in Boots 2, people think that there is potential for another Shrek film. And with the way this film ends, it makes sense why Puss in Boots would go back to the kingdom of far, far away, and why would go back to the characters from the Shrek franchise to go and visit old friends, because he's had his mortality questioned. He's come quite literally face to face with death, and so it makes sense why I go back to his old friends. And I love the way that this film ends. I remember watching this for the first time and thinking, oh, finally we got this set up to Shrek 5. But when I was watching it the other day, when I was rewatching it for the other day, I was like, oh, the setup to Shrek 5 at the end of this movie is a nice little note that they put onto the end of the film, which wasn't needed, but just makes you smile, and just makes me now get excited for the 5th Shrek film, which we know is coming next year. I'm really looking forward to the 5th Shrek film. I know people are moaning about the animation. Honestly, I think they'll change it. I think the animation for the 5th Shrek film would be kind of similar to the animation that was in this movie, that was in Puss in Boots The Last Wish. And if that is the case, then, yeah, I think it's going to be great. And I think this film gives potential for the next Shrek film to be great. Like I said before, this film does not deserve to be as good as it is. It is so good. And yeah, it's got its issues here and there. I don't love the addition of Jack Thorne in this film, or Jack Horner, sorry. I don't love the addition of Jack Horner in this film. I thought the film didn't necessarily need him. I understand why he's in the film. I don't think it's a bad addition to the film. I just don't think he was needed. And at times the film does feel a little overcrowded. But it's it's just brilliant. And it does not deserve to be, but it is. Like, this is a sequel to a spin-off to a franchise that, well, everyone thought was over by the time this film came out. But, I mean, this film ends up being not only wildly entertaining and visually engaging and thrilling and exciting and all that jazz to watch, but also it managed to explore these dark and, well, hard to talk about ideas, and do so in a way that, well, is easy to understand. It managed to explore themes surrounding death, but not in a way that I think would scare children off. In a way that I think is welcoming and gets you thinking in all the right ways. And one last thing, the new edition, or what's the character's name here? I've got it somewhere. Give me a sec. The new edition of Perrito, the dog Perrito, is adorable. Not only does that dog look so cute, and that's not a phrase you usually hear me say, but also I love how that dog represents. I love how the character Dorito, or is it Perrito? It's Perrito, sorry. I love how the character of Perrito, I kept forgetting the name of the character there. I love how the character Perrito represents that even the characters with the most tragic upbringing learn to appreciate the happiness in their life and learn to appreciate the good things that come to them. I love the character Perrito, and I can't wait to see more of that character in the next Shrek film as well. I think all the voice acting is just as wonderful as always. I mean, Florence Pugh voices Goldilocks, the three bears, two of the three bears. One's voiced by Ray Winston, one's voiced by Academy Award winner Olivia Colman, and I'm pretty sure this is after she won an Academy Award. John Mulaney voices Jack Horner, and of course you've got Tony Banderas, which is still genius casting, voicing Puss in Boots, and Salma Hayek voicing Kitty Softpaws, which is, again, it's like music to your ears, this voice cast. And it doesn't get in the way. You know, when you're watching this film, you don't feel like you're just hearing these actors' voices, characters. It feels like they throw themselves into the voice acting. Not quite as much as the voice acting in The Wild Robot felt like that, but it felt like that enough that I was able to get past that, because this film does have a lucrative voice cast, and usually that could get in the way of films for me, but it didn't get in the way here. And like I said before, this film is absolutely brilliant. It's a family film, and a great family film at that, about death that manages to be enormously engaging and wildly entertaining. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Now that sounds a bit low maybe for the amount of praise I was giving this film today, but I think 8.5 out of 10 is a worthy rating for this film. I mean, I would give it a 9 out of 10, but I just think the addition of Jack Horner wasn't necessarily needed. I don't think that character was needed in this film. And I think if we took him out of the film, it still probably would have been the same. But again, it's not a big issue for me when it comes to this film. I can get past the addition of him easily. I think he's fine in the film. It's just my least favourite part of the film. And at times it does get a little too crowded. And I do think they could have scaled it back a little, because you do have so many characters in this film, but it's not messy. It's not messy at all. I mean, yeah, it's a bit overcrowded at times, but although it's following 15 characters, I mean not 15 characters, it's more like 10 characters, but although it's following about 10 characters in the film, it never really feels messy. The film does a really brilliant job of balancing all of these characters and still making it a film all about Puss in Boots, and all about Puss in Boots realising that death comes for everybody, even somebody with 9 lives, you know? This film is just great. It's really great, and it breathed new life into the Shrek franchise. It managed to be entertaining with a capital E, visually stunning, and one heck of a movie. I mean, it's a family movie that I think every family should watch, and I think every member of a family would get something out of. This is a proper family film, you know? And you don't get many family films like this. Ones that are not only incredibly engrossing, but also leave you with something to think about. You know, you don't get many animated movies like this nowadays. And Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, surprisingly, is one of them. And so, all in all, as I've already said, and as I'm going to say once more in today's podcast, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is an 8.5 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. And that's it for my Shrek film reviews, at least for now, because Shrek 5 is in the works, and I will review Shrek 5 when it comes out in 2026, when it comes out in Christmas of 2026. But I suppose until then, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast. I look forward, and if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. And look forward to many more podcasts and many more videos coming very, very soon on this channel. As I've already said, thank you so much for watching or listening to this podcast, and I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.